All right, so today we're going deep on H. pylori.
Oh, yeah.
This bacteria, it's been kind of in the news lately
Hmm.
because we're figuring out just how much it plays a role in gastritis and ulcers and even gastric cancer.
Right.
And you sent over a whole stack of research papers on this little bugger.
I did.
And I really want to kind of unpack it with you,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to this link between H. pylori and socioeconomic factors.
Yeah. It really is interesting. You would think a bacteria,
Right.
it wouldn't discriminate, but the research is showing that socioeconomic conditions can really play a role
Yeah.
in not only who gets infected, but also how successful treatment is.
Yeah, and one of the studies that really jumped out at me was this one that looked at Afghan refugees in Turkey.
Okay.
It was in the Journal of Experimental and Clinical Medicine,
Hmm.
and the findings were pretty stark.
Yeah, absolutely.
It found that 78% of Afghan refugees tested positive for H. pylori,
Wow.
compared to 60.8% of Turkish residents. So, I mean, that's a pretty big difference.
That is a huge difference, and it really speaks to, I think, the challenging circumstances that a lot of refugees face.
You think about, like, living conditions and access to clean water
Yeah,
and healthcare and all of these things that can make someone so much more susceptible
absolutely.
to this bacteria.
Yeah.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
This same study found that despite those higher infection rates, the Afghan refugees had similar rates of atrophic gastritis,
Huh.
which is a precancerous condition,
Right.
compared to Turkish residents.
Yeah.
So if H. pylori is such a major risk factor for gastric cancer,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't we expect to see higher rates of this precancerous condition
You would think so.
in this population?
You would think so, yeah.
That's kind of a head scratcher.
It is. It's a little bit of a head scratcher. It's a complex issue, and it reminds us that H. pylori isn't the only player in the game when it comes to gastric cancer. There's
Right.
genetics, and diet also plays a role. So it could be that something in their diet, even though, they're facing all these hardships,
Yeah.
might be protective, or maybe there's some genetic factors at work that we don't fully understand yet.
Like a medical mystery we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
So speaking of different pieces to the puzzle, you also included some research on H. pylori treatment in Afghanistan,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically this comparison between sequential therapy and hybrid therapy.
Right.
And the study, this one was in the Journal for Research in Applied Sciences and Biotechnology. It found that hybrid therapy was more effective at actually eradicating the bacteria.
Okay.
So what is it about this approach that makes it different and potentially better?
Well, so both therapies use a combination of medications. It's kind of trying to hit the bacteria with a 1-2 punch.
Right.
But they differ in the specific antibiotics they use and how long the treatment lasts. So
Right.
sequential therapy is kind of a 2-phase approach. So 5 days of omeprazole and amoxicillin, followed by another 5 days of omeprazole, metronidazole, and clarithromycin. Okay. Hybrid therapy, on the other hand, starts with 7 days of amoxicillin and omeprazole, and then another 7 days of clarithromycin and metronidazole.
Okay, so it's using different combinations of
Yeah.
antibiotics and for a longer duration.
Yeah. And that might be why it's more effective.
Is that what they think?
That's what the researchers speculate, yeah.
Okay.
That the longer duration and maybe the synergistic effects of those particular antibiotics and hybrid therapy are key. It's like launching a multi-pronged attack,
Yeah.
making it harder for the bacteria to develop resistance and increasing the chances of, completely wiping it out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, shifting gears a little bit.
All right.
You included a study on H. pylori infection in school children in
Right.
Jalalabad, Afghanistan.
Right.
And the findings were a little alarming, to say the
To
least.
say the least, yeah, almost half the children
Wow.
tested positive for H. pylori.
Goodness.
It's a stark reminder of how vulnerable kids are, especially in developing countries, to this infection.
Yeah. What are even some of the factors? I mean, I can only imagine, but what are some of the factors that contribute to such high rates?
Oh, you think about the environment that a lot of children in developing countries face.
Right.
Crowded living conditions,
Yeah.
often limited access to clean water,
Yeah.
proper sanitation, larger families where the bacteria can spread more easily.
Right.
And then there's the hygiene practices, are kids washing their hands properly and frequently?
Right.
And the Jalalabad study actually found a strong link between larger families and poor hand washing habits and a higher likelihood of H. pylori infection.
So something as simple as hand washing can have a real impact.
It can, absolutely.
Right.
It's such a basic thing, but it can be really powerful in preventing the spread.
Yeah.
But it's not the whole story.
Right.
The Jalalabad study also pointed to socioeconomic factors,
Okay.
like parental education and family income.
Mhm.
So children with parents who had a university education,
Right.
and those from higher income families were less likely to be infected.
So we're seeing that connection again
We are, yeah.
between health and
Yeah, it's a critical piece of the puzzle.
socioeconomic conditions.
It really is.
It's fascinating.
It is.
Whether we're looking at refugees in Turkey or children in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
these factors seem to be playing such a huge role.
Yeah, they're a major determinant in who gets infected.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about prevalence.
Yeah.
We've talked about some treatment options. But what about some of the complications that can happen if this is left untreated?
Yeah.
You included some research on the potential complications of long-term use of PPIs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those medications that are commonly prescribed to reduce stomach acid.
Right.
And there was one article in JAMA Pediatrics that really caught my eye.
Okay.
It found that PPI use was linked to an increased risk of serious infections in young children.
Wow.
What's the connection there?
Well, so PPIs work by suppressing stomach acid production. And while that's helpful in certain conditions, like you said, it can have unintended consequences. You know, stomach acid actually plays a vital role in protecting us from harmful bacteria.
Right.
So when we suppress it, we're essentially altering the gut microbiome.
Right.
And that can create an environment where certain bacteria can flourish and lead to infections.
So in some ways, are we trading one problem for another?
In some cases, yes. The JAMA Pediatric study actually found associations between PPI use and infections in all sorts of places. The digestive tract, ear, nose, and throat, the respiratory system, even the nervous system.
That's concerning.
It is.
It makes you wonder, are we overprescribing PPIs?
Right.
Especially to children,
Yeah.
when maybe lifestyle changes or alternative therapies might be a better first line of defense.
It's a valid point, and that leads us to another research article that you included.
Cool.
This one from Advanced Therapeutics.
Okay.
It digs even deeper into the various side effects
Yeah.
associated with long-term PPI use.
And it's not just infections, right?
No, it's not.
We're talking electrolyte disturbances,
Right.
kidney disease, even bone fractures.
Yeah.
It's pretty alarming.
It is, and each of these side effects has a really complex mechanism behind it.
Right.
So, for instance, PPIs can interfere with calcium absorption,
Mm-hmm.
which over time weakens bones and increases the risk of fractures.
Right.
They can also mess with magnesium absorption,
Oh, wow.
which leads to hypomagnesemia, which can cause all kinds of things: fatigue, muscle cramps, even seizures.
Wow. And there was a quote from that Advanced Therapeutics article that really stuck with me.
Oh,
It said, PPIs should, in the end, only be prescribed with prudence and with the development of adverse events in mind.
right.
It's a powerful reminder that even medications that seem safe
Mm-hmm.
can have these unintended consequences,
Yeah.
especially with long-term use.
Yeah. I think that sums it up perfectly.
Mm.
You know,
Right.
PPIs can be life-saving for certain conditions, but we need to be cautious about overuse and prolonged use. You know, it's always best to try and address the root cause of the digestive issues and consider alternative treatment options whenever possible.
Well, this deep dive is proving to be really insightful.
Yeah.
I'm starting to really see these connections between H. pylori and socioeconomic factors and just how complex treatment is.
Yeah.
And we've covered a lot, but I feel like we're just getting started.
Yeah, we've just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore.
I know, it's exciting.
Yeah, and I'm eager to dive into that next layer of this fascinating topic.
Let's do it.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? We tend to think about bacteria, you know, as being everywhere, affecting everyone equally.
Right.
But this research really challenges that assumption.
It does, and we've been laser focused on Afghanistan.
Yeah.
But the research that you shared also included studies from other parts of the world.
It does, yeah.
And those give us a broader picture of
right.
how socioeconomic conditions impact H. pylori infection.
Exactly. There was one that looked at H. pylori prevalence in children in Manufia, Egypt.
Okay.
And they found an infection rate of 45.1%.
Wow.
Which is strikingly similar to what was found in those school children in Jalalabad.
So even with the geographic and cultural differences,
Yeah.
we're seeing similar rates of infection in kids.
We are, yeah.
Makes you wonder if there are some common threads
Right.
that link these regions.
Well, if you consider the socioeconomic indicators of both Afghanistan and Egypt,
Yeah.
some patterns do emerge.
Okay.
Both countries face challenges with poverty,
Right.
sanitation, and access to health care,
Right.
all factors that likely contribute to those high H. pylori infection rates.
Again, it's that reminder that health isn't just an individual concern,
Right.
but it's so deeply intertwined with
It's societal.
the social and economic
Yeah, I
realities
bet.
of where people live.
Yeah.
But, the research also mentions studies from places where the infection rates are drastically different.
Yeah.
So there was one from Sudan, for instance, that found a much lower prevalence of H. pylori,
Okay.
only 8.4% in adolescents.
That's right. And that contrast, I think, highlights the importance of understanding the specific context of each region.
Right.
So while Sudan faces its own challenges,
Mhm.
it's made some significant strides in improving sanitation and access to clean water,
Right.
which likely explains that lower infection rate.
It's encouraging to see how public health interventions
Yeah.
can make a real difference.
They can.
But, even in high-income countries, H. pylori is still on the radar.
Mm-hmm.
The research mentioned a study in Poland that found a prevalence of 23.6% in teenagers.
Yeah, that's a reminder that H. pylori isn't just a developing world problem, it's a
Yeah.
global issue.
Right.
And the factors that are driving its spread can vary
Yeah.
depending on the region. So in Poland, it might be less about sanitation and more about things like dietary habits and close contact within families.
It seems like peeling back the layers of this onion
Yeah,
only reveals more layers.
it does.
But one thing is becoming crystal clear.
Yeah,
Those socioeconomic factors
they do.
have a huge influence
Yeah.
on the global distribution
Mhm.
of H. pylori infection.
And that understanding, I think, is crucial for developing, effective public health strategies.
Right.
We need to move beyond those one-size-fits-all solutions and tailor interventions to the specific needs and circumstances
Absolutely.
of each community.
Now, we've talked a lot about the prevalence.
Yeah.
We've talked about treatment. But what about the long-term consequences
Okay.
of H. pylori infection if it's left untreated?
Right.
The research mentioned a connection between H. pylori and iron deficiency anemia,
It did.
which can be a really serious issue,
It can be a serious issue, yeah.
especially for children.
Especially for children because, H. pylori can cause chronic inflammation in the stomach,
Uh-huh.
and that can interfere with the body's ability to absorb iron. Yeah.
And iron is essential for making red blood cells,
Right.
which carry oxygen throughout the body.
Right.
So without enough iron, you develop anemia,
Right.
and that leads to fatigue, weakness, pale skin, all kinds of problems.
Does something as seemingly simple as a bacteria in the stomach can have these cascading effects
It can.
on a child's development and well-being?
Absolutely. And the research you shared underscores that with a study that directly examined the association between H. pylori infection and iron deficiency anemia in children.
Right?
And the findings were quite compelling. There's a strong link between the two.
So we started by talking about bacteria,
Okay.
and now we're talking about blood cells and oxygen transport.
We are.
It really shows how interconnected different systems in the body are.
It does. It really does.
And it also, I think, really underlines the importance of early detection and treatment for H. pylori
Absolutely.
to prevent these long-term complications.
Early intervention can make a world of difference. Yeah. All this talk about treatment options,
Mm-hmm.
the antibiotics, the PPIs,
Yeah.
makes me wonder if we're overly focused on reacting to H. pylori infection
Okay.
rather than proactively preventing it.
That's a great point.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great point. We often jump to treating the symptoms or the infection itself,
Right.
but maybe there's a better way.
What would a preventative approach even look like?
Well, if we think about how H. pylori spreads,
Yeah.
primarily through contaminated food and water and person-to-person contact,
Okay.
it gives us some clues about where to focus those preventative efforts.
So, like, improving sanitation and hygiene practices would be top of the list?
Absolutely. Access to clean water and proper sanitation are essential.
Yeah.
It's about creating environments where H. pylori has less opportunity to spread
Right.
through contaminated sources.
So we're talking about public health interventions on a large scale,
Large-scale change is definitely a key piece of the puzzle.
especially in regions where those basic necessities
Or lacking. Yeah. But there's a role for individual actions, too.
Okay.
Even in places with good sanitation,
Yeah.
encouraging people to adopt simple hygiene practices,
Right.
like thorough and frequent hand washing,
Mm-hmm.
especially before meals and after using the toilet,
Right.
can dramatically reduce the risk of person-to-person transmission.
Such a simple habit
Such a simple habit.
can make a world of difference.
It can make a world of difference. But what about food safety?
Yeah. Is there anything we can do
Absolutely.
on an individual level
Yes.
to minimize that risk?
Washing fruits and vegetables thoroughly,
Uh-huh.
cooking meat and poultry to the right temperature,
Yeah.
storing food properly. These are all crucial steps in preventing foodborne H. pylori transmission.
So it's about being mindful of our food handling practices,
It is.
both at home and when we're eating out.
Exactly.
Makes you wonder, though, is there a vaccine for H. pylori?
Oh, wouldn't that be amazing?
Like we have for hepatitis B?
A vaccine would be a game changer in the fight against H. pylori.
Right.
Unfortunately, developing one has been incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
H. pylori is a crafty bacteria.
Right.
It's very good at evading the human immune system.
So is it tougher nut to crack than some other infections?
It is.
But I imagine research is ongoing in this area.
Absolutely. Scientists around the world are working tirelessly to develop an effective vaccine.
That's great.
It's a complex undertaking, but the potential payoff is huge.
Right.
You know, a vaccine could potentially eliminate a massive burden of disease globally.
Yeah.
Especially in the regions where H. pylori is most prevalent.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch out for.
It is.
In the meantime, it seems like the focus should be on strengthening those public health systems.
Yeah.
Promoting good hygiene, raising awareness
Absolutely.
about the risks of H. pylori and how to prevent it.
I couldn't agree more. We often pour resources into treating diseases after they take hold.
Right.
But the most powerful medicine is often prevention. So investing in public health measures and encouraging healthy habits, we can create a world where fewer people suffer from the long-term effects of this infection.
It's a hopeful vision for the future.
It is.
And it's one that requires a collective effort.
Yeah.
It's not just about individuals taking action. It's about communities and governments around the world working together to create healthier environments.
It's a global issue that demands a global response.
So we've covered the impact of socioeconomic factors.
We have.
We've explored the intricacies of treatment. We've considered the potential of prevention.
Yes.
You know, when we talk about H. pylori, we're really talking about so much more than just a bacteria.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about understanding the interconnectedness of things.
Right.
How our environment, our social structures, even our individual choices can influence our health.
What stands out to you as the most crucial takeaway?
You know, for me, it's the reminder that health is not merely the absence of disease.
Right.
It's about well-being. In a holistic sense.
Right.
And that includes taking a proactive approach to preventing illness, understanding the social determinants of health, and recognizing the power of individual actions to create positive change.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
We often think about health as something that happens to us, but this research really shows that we have agency.
We do.
We can make choices that promote well-being for ourselves and our communities.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Now, speaking of individual actions, there's one more intriguing aspect of this research that we haven't discussed yet.
Okay.
The potential role of probiotics in managing H. pylori.
Right. You mentioned it briefly earlier.
Yeah, what got your attention about that?
Well, we talked about how H. pylori disrupts that delicate balance of the gut microbiome and probiotics by introducing those beneficial bacteria into the gut have the potential to restore that balance.
Okay.
And some research suggests that specific probiotic strains like Lactobacillus reuteri might even have direct antimicrobial effects against H. pylori.
Wow.
Or enhance the effectiveness of the traditional antibiotic treatment.
So it's not necessarily about replacing the conventional treatments.
Right.
But using probiotics almost as like a complementary therapy.
Exactly.
To maybe improve eradication rates and reduce some of those nasty side effects.
Exactly. It's a fascinating area of research, and it highlights, I think, the evolving nature of medicine.
Right.
You know, we're constantly learning new things and exploring innovative ways to approach these health challenges.
Yeah.
But it's important to note that the research on using probiotics for H. pylori is still in its early stages.
Okay.
More studies are needed to confirm their effectiveness and to figure out the ideal strains and dosages.
It's definitely a promising avenue.
It is.
For future research. It makes you wonder if someday we'll be able to harness the power of these good bacteria to prevent and treat a whole range of infections and diseases.
Now, wouldn't that be something?
That would be amazing.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities.
This deep dive has been an eye-opening journey, to say the least.
It has.
We've covered so much ground. The global reach of H. pylori, the complexities of treatment, the importance of prevention, the potential of probiotics,
Mm-hmm.
that profound connection between health and socioeconomic factors.
It's been incredible.
It has been an incredible learning experience.
I completely agree. I think our listener now has a much deeper understanding
I hope so.
of this tiny but mighty bacteria
Yeah.
and the many factors that contribute to its impact on global health.
We were just talking about, shifting our focus from just treating H. pylori to actually preventing it.
Yeah,
It's a big picture concept,
that is.
but it feels like there's a lot to unpack there.
There is, and the research you shared touches on some really intriguing possibilities, especially when we consider, those public health interventions we talked about.
Right. Those large-scale efforts to improve sanitation and access to clean water.
Right.
Those seem absolutely fundamental.
They are.
Especially in regions where H. pylori is just rampant.
Absolutely. You can't underestimate the impact of clean water and proper sanitation.
Right.
It's about breaking the chain of transmission at its source.
Right.
Making it that much harder for H. pylori to spread through contaminated water and food.
It's like laying the groundwork for a healthier community.
Literally.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah.
But even with those larger systems in place, individual actions still matter.
They do, yeah. Think of it as building multiple layers of protection.
Right.
Even in areas with good sanitation.
Yeah.
Encouraging people to adopt those simple hygiene practices. Like frequent and thorough hand washing.
Right.
Can make a huge difference. Yeah.
It's about creating a culture of hygiene where those habits become second nature.
It's interesting how something as simple as washing your hands can be such a powerful tool.
It really is.
In public health.
We often overlook the simple things.
Right.
But they can have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Now, you also brought up the idea of a vaccine for H. pylori.
Yeah.
Which would be incredible, wouldn't it?
It would be a game changer, especially for those regions that are hit the hardest by this bacteria.
It would be. But as you mentioned, developing a vaccine for H. pylori has proven to be tricky.
It has.
It has. H. pylori is a master of disguise.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving, finding ways to evade our immune systems.
Right.
Which makes it really difficult to develop a vaccine that can effectively target it.
So it's a tougher opponent than some other infections.
It is?
Are researchers giving up?
Not at all. Scientists around the world are still hard at work.
That's great.
Exploring different approaches to vaccine development.
It's a complex puzzle.
Right.
But they're making progress.
Yeah.
The potential rewards are just too great to ignore.
Right. So while we wait for that breakthrough, it seems like our best bet is to focus on those preventative measures that we can implement now. Improving those public health systems.
Right.
Promoting good hygiene.
Right.
Spreading awareness about the risks of H. pylori and how to avoid it.
I agree. It's about taking a proactive, multifaceted approach.
Right.
And it's about empowering individuals to take control of their own health.
Mm-hmm.
We can't always prevent every illness.
Right.
But we can make choices that minimize our risk.
Right.
And create a healthier environment for ourselves and those around us.
Well, this has been a truly enlightening deep dive.
It has.
We've explored the intricate relationship between H. pylori and socioeconomic factors.
Yeah.
We delved into the complexities of treatment and considered the exciting possibilities of prevention.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
It has been a journey.
It really has.
But perhaps the most crucial takeaway is this reminder that health is a collective responsibility.
It is.
A shared journey that involves individuals, communities, and governments all working together to create a healthier world.
I couldn't have put it better myself.
Well, it's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of H. pylori.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights and a renewed appreciation for the power of prevention.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep asking questions.
Yes.
Keep learning and keep diving deep.